Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next episode on this series going over stewardship, on how we repay back to God the gifts and the blessings that He has given us in our life. Today, we're here with Jessica Lubianski, who is youth minister, DRE, and many other hats here at St. Anne's in Livonia. And the topic we're covering is out of that newer understanding of how parishes look at stewardship. They talk about prayer, participation, and generosity sometimes instead of time, talent, and treasure. And so the topic we're going to be looking at today is participation. And I guess to begin with, we're asking you, Jessica, what are your thoughts when you hear of participation in regards to stewardship?
I think it all comes down to how are we using those gifts that God has given us to actually go out in our church and actually participate. Not just throw money in the collection basket or do a little checkup, but actually participate in what we're doing and being a part of our parish life.
Yeah, I think it's a very important one because more and more often we're encountering where people just want to do, I donated into the basket and that's all I need to do. So when we need help around the parishes, the mindset is, well, y'all, I already took care of that. Someone else can do that.
Well, I think you can look at our CYO organizations. How many parents have we encountered that just want to check off and say, hey, can I pay not to go to the concession stand? And that's our generation, that parents would rather just throw money. But God calls us to participation. Yeah. Let's think about the parable where the rich man, he gives tenants away, right? Mm-hmm. He gives 5, 3, 1. One of them went and hid it. He didn't want to multiply his investment. And it's not just talking about money there. It's talking about what we actually do. And so God doesn't, while tithing is great, He wants us to participate. He wants us to serve. Mother Teresa, she said that you don't have to do a lot of really big things. We just have to do a lot of small things with the great love. And that's what participation is doing small things. You don't have to be at your church every single night. It's doing things that will make a difference and help eventually build the kingdom of God.
Yeah, it's really putting our faith into action. And we see it a lot. I talk about it with faith formation. I know you've done the same. We're teaching these kiddos and these adults a lot about the faith. But there's an aspect where you've got to take what we're learning and put it into practice. That it's not just meant to be head knowledge, but it's meant to be something that becomes a lifestyle, something that we do. And it doesn't really have to be big things. They don't have to do really big ministry or think, well, I need to go fix the roof of the church or do all these things. Those, yes, we have to pay someone to go fix the higher end things. But there are ways we can do things simply in service and participating in our parish. From working at a parish festival, just taking on, helping out at a booth or helping the cooks prepare the meal. I know your daughter recently started doing altar serving and is having a really good time with that as far as I can hear at least.
Well, and that's the easiest way for, I think, especially young people that don't want to participate or are hesitant, getting involved in the liturgy, choir, being an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion, being a lector, just being a greeter and usher. Those things, you're already coming to Mass, and if your children see you serving, then they're going to want to serve. My children love serving in our church because my family's actively involved here. They're always disappointed when they're not serving. Oh, are we going to that? Are we doing this? But it's by our actions that they see. I learned to serve from my grandparents and parents. I want my children to say, I want to serve because my parents served. This is just what we did. It's a normalcy kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think I grew up in a little bit of a bubble to some degree. Panna Maria is a very different community to some degree because it was just part of our DNA to some degree. The parish was the center of our life. That, we're going to be at the festival. Yes, we're going to be working. Yes, we're going to altar serve. There wasn't a question that we wouldn't do those things just because that was just the normal routine of what we did. That was the flow of our life. And nowadays, what we're seeing coming out of COVID, it's become even more exasperating to some degree, is this idea that I can exist in my own bubble, that I can exist by myself, my faith is only private, and I'm the only one affected by everything around me. And I remember reading articles, and I've been doing a lot of talks with our confirmation kids, talking about this, how nowadays there are parishioners, they'll talk about how they finally leave a parish. So, I've been coming to this church for 5 years, and not one person has ever told me hello. First off, I want to know how you can make it into a parish community for 5 years. Every week you got to at least shake hands with people. We do the sign of the peace. You got to at least shake hands and say hi there, at least a little bit.
No, you just go like this.
Just do a peace sign to them.
Just a peace sign. That's what people do.
And so, but the idea, how sad is it for us to reflect on that the one thing that people also are looking for in a community is that welcoming environment of people going out of their way to say, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here. And realistically, that's one of the oldest ministries in most parishes, is ushers. Just people to greet, to say, hello, here's your book, here's your music issue. And like I said, I've been talking to our confirmation kids about this. I said, if you're doing this for a month at a time, 2 months, you're going to be able to recognize this person comes every week. This one comes is a new person. And you get to learn the stories of those who come normally. You can greet those. I don't recognize you. Thank you for coming. Are you from a different mass, from a different parish, from out of town? But it makes a difference, I think, for a community when they have this idea in their mind that part of my participation is just simply being hospitable and welcoming someone who shows up, not just being upset that they stole my seat in the church. I've always wanted, I wish I could find a poster with it that I had found on Facebook at one point. It was an image of an older lady walking up to a man on the end of a pew, and she's tapping him on the shoulder. Hello, I'm so glad you're into our parish. Welcome for being here, but you're in my spot. That mindset also is part of our participation. I could probably go right next to this person. I can sit in front or behind, even if this is the spot I always like to go to. But our participation can be as simple as hospitableness.
Yeah. And you mentioned a good point about COVID, about people not wanting to come back for various reasons, excuses, health things. One of the things that I've been really trying to focus on for our families, and it's come up with some conversations with dads saying, maybe this is a sign that I need to get involved in my faith formation life with my kids, because their kids are in First Communion and they're trying to learn these prayers and different things. Yeah. And so I think it's important to look at that. Participation isn't only at the church, it's in your home life too. So how are you going to participate in being catechists in your home life for your children? How are you going to participate in making sure that you are the foundation of your household to center your family around your Catholic faith? And so it goes far beyond just serving in our church. Exactly. It goes to how are we going to participate in our home life to be Christ-centered families.
Exactly. Yeah, we always will say, like in the rite of baptism, we talk about how as parents, you become the first teachers of the faith to your children. I always tell families, the church is there to fill in the holes that are left from, whereas a parent, you're not able to do everything. But we're meant to not be everything teaching your kids. Y'all do a lot of that teaching and catechizing and participating in the family life at home. And I know maybe it's something we can even reflect on in this video, that with those confirmation interviews that I'm doing, I challenge the kid to do 3 things. To pick something liturgical, something communal, something educational. But if they do one of each in each of those 3 things, they are going to be participating in their faith. They're going to be living it more, and they're going to be learning and understanding it a lot more. Liturgical, finding something at Mass that gets them involved to come. Communal, get involved in the larger life of your parish, whether it's CYO, a parish festival, catechist, whatever that is. And then educationally thinking, what can I do to continue growing in my faith? I always tell our confirmation kids, confirmation is not graduation. You're not done with this. You've got to continue. And that's a message for us as adults to remember sometimes as well, that we're called to do the same thing, to continue growing and understanding our faith. But that if we're able to do those 3 things, we are going to participate well in our faith.
Right, and it's all about finding participation and balance. balance too. Because sometimes people, they'll go on retreats and they'll do so much and they'll have this life-altering conversion that all they want to do is eat, breathe, sleep at the church. And so they don't get this balanced life, and we often seem very burnt out and different things. And so I think it's important that whenever we do participate and we're called to participate, that we find a healthy balance. Because no matter what, God calls us to have family first and then to serve at our local churches and in our local communities. And so all of these things that we're talking about come together in a really beautiful way to ultimately help us get closer to God, bring others closer to God through our stewardship and participation. Those smiles that you're talking about, those little gestures that make you feel welcome, they make a big difference, but it's because we're choosing to participate. I can serve and I can just go through the motions, or I can actually be present. And that ministry of presence is something that we really miss a lot whenever we are participating in activities and in church.
Yeah, ministry of presence is very important, because sometimes we realize, especially if we're dealing with certain groups of people, I don't have the words to say. I don't know how to do certain things. And it falls in a lot of different ways. Homebound ministry, helping our elderly, helping connect them to our community, being an aide in a catechist room. I may not know how to teach faith formation, but I can be in the room and be present to where the kids at least see that I'm trying. I mean, I've loved, throughout my formation as a priest, homebound ministry was always something that I would do. In fact, my pastor at home, if he found out if I was home on break, he would call my dad to go do the visits to the homebound, knowing that my dad would then bum it off on me. So it was a really large scheme to get Scott to go visit the homebound by calling his dad. And what I would find is that, giving communion to someone who's homebound takes 5 minutes. But we would always say, take that time, sit, talk, visit. Most of these who were shut-ins who were bringing communion to, they don't have anybody. I had a lady in Santa Maria when I was growing up. She didn't drive. She had never married, never had children, and lived on the family homestead that had since been divided out amongst her other siblings. So you crossed through 4 different gates of property for her siblings, going through pastures to get to the house where she was at. The only contact she had was if her nephews and nieces came, or if someone from the church came to bring her communion. That was the only outside communication she had. And so just sitting and listening to her tell her stories and visiting, you could see how her day changed completely. And it made that work worthwhile. And so presence is deeply important. I also think what you mentioned in regards to finding balance in your ministry is important. Because as you said, sometimes it can almost become an addiction to minister to some degree. And that's when I begin having to tell people, you've got to step back a little bit and allow your family life and your faith life to find balance with each other. Because otherwise they'll eat each other up. We can't do only things with our families in our secular world, but we can't only do things in the church either. It is important for them to see us going out and doing things just in our regular life amongst our families. Going to the baseball games of our kids or our grandkids. That also is a part of this participation and giving that visibility. I know I've always tried to go to football games or events at the parishes I'm at, to the schools that are in that school district, so that the kids at least see that presence and participation. And so getting that opportunity to think outside the box, I think, is also very important. Beyond thinking about how do I participate here or how I get asked to participate here. One of those great books that Matthew Kelly put out was The 4 Signs of a Dynamic Catholic. And that book now, I think, is almost 15 years old, if not older now. And in it, he said that 10% of a parish does 90% of the work. Post-COVID, they said that number has changed to 7% do 93% of the work nowadays. So that number has actually shrunk. Less people are even doing more than we used to. And so I think maybe the challenge when we're looking at stewardship in regards to participation, how do we even get back to the 10% doing 90? And if we're still at that 10%, think of everything that's done in our parishes and in our families and our communities with that 10%. How much more can we accomplish, as it says in that book, if we go up by 1%? That's potentially on the size of your parish, that could be 50 extra volunteers. Guadalupe, that could be almost 100 volunteers for the size of the parish. What could we accomplish just bumping it up by 1% and getting just a little bit more involved? And even if it's just something small, I encourage, if you're watching our videos or considering stewardship in your parish, how can you begin to participate more or invite others to participate? Opening your ministry or something you enjoy, put out a hand. Say, hey, I know I enjoy doing this. I see you here at Mass. How about you come and join me? All they can say is no. But that personal invitation goes so far in allowing this ability to participate and live out our faith to really thrive. And so I hope this is something you would consider doing in your parish. And I thank you for being here with us today for our speaker today.
And I would tell your viewers that if they're not doing anything, just choose one thing. Start with one small thing.
Exactly.
And do it with a great love, like Mother Teresa said. And their life will be super enriched just from that one thing.
Just one thing. And so I do want to thank all of you for tuning in with us today. I invite you to tune in next time for our next episode, and hope you have a great day.